Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I am your host, Emily Hayden, and today we have guest Cathy Heller on the show. She is the host of the podcast Don't Keep Your Day Job, which has over 33 million downloads, which now I think is at about 40 million listens. She has had conversations with successful authors, celebrities, and leaders like actor Jenna Fisher, Matthew McConaughey, that's pretty cool, spiritual leader and entrepreneur Tony Robbins, as well as singer and songwriter Jason Mraz, and so many more. She truly is such a great leader who really believes that every soul is here to give their gift to the world. I cannot recommend her podcast enough. I was just listening to one of the most recent episodes this morning about making your life awesome, and I feel like you guys would get so much value out of that podcast. So look her up, go check out that episode, and make sure to subscribe to her show if you enjoy today's conversation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome on Cathy Heller. Welcome to the Evolve with Emily show.
I'm really happy to meet you. We got to talk for a few minutes before we officially hit record, and I'm like, she's definitely a person I want to be friends with. So I love, honestly, like that's one of the best gifts of podcasting. Would you not agree? Like who you get to meet by just having a podcast. It's so fun. And I mean, podcasts in general have just become like, I think the creme de la creme of content, because people who are listening to podcasts are very smart. You know, they're not wanting a 90-second reel. They're wanting to like deep dive, which says a lot about them. So yes, congrats to you. Congrats to you listeners for being like, so like growth oriented. You know, you want to hear a real conversation. So I just feel like, and then the podcasters themselves, I think I just feel, you know, I've met a lot of, not to say there probably aren't like weirdos who are podcasters, but I've just met so many cool people. So I'm glad to meet you. I'm glad that we connected.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think it really shows where your values are. I think especially podcasters, like you're mentioning, one thing that we know that we all value is real, authentic connection through conversation. I think that's so beautiful, and being able to have conversations about every kind of topic and just an open conversation. You know, I'm someone who I'm very curious about life, and I love hearing people's perspectives. And, you know, when I saw that you had over 40 million listens now, I believe, I was just like so inspired and so excited to talk to you, because I'm like, man, I can only imagine the conversations that you've been able to have and the personal growth that you personally have had, even just on your show. So that's kind of where I want to start, is what got you to start your podcast in the first place? What was the reason for you starting it? And then how do you believe that you personally have evolved as a person, a mom, you know, all the things since starting your show?
I love the question. It shows so much like depth and insight to even ask the question like that. And I've never really heard it asked like that. So really kudos to you. I really love that way that you like, you know, just handed me that ball. So the reason I started the podcast is one thing, and it really, the reason I keep doing the podcast is another thing, because of how I've grown. Cool. So I love that you asked it that way. So the reason I started the podcast was because I was having a certain experience in my life that I felt other people were looking for, and I felt like I could tangibly make a difference for them. And that experience was being paid to do something I loved. And I felt that there were a lot of people, especially having moved to LA in 2003, there were so many creative people who saw things very binary, like all or nothing. Like I'm either going to get some lucky break or nothing. And it was just one or the other. And I had found another path, which was somewhere in the middle. And I was making money doing what I love, which is songwriting. And so other people would say to me, I don't get it. I saw this full page story on you in Billboard, but you don't have a record deal. And yet I know you just bought a house. Like, what on earth are you doing? How are you doing that? And it was because I finally saw the clues that were left in my path. And I was like, I could teach this to somebody. I could show this to someone. So when I started the podcast, it was originally called, which it still is, Don't Keep Your Day Job, because it was like, if you have something you really wish you would rather be doing, guess what? You can do it. Let me show you what's worked. And let me interview other people who've opened their own bakery or were able to start their own fashion line. And you too can do that. we're actually changing the name of the podcast to just the Cathy Heller podcast, because the podcast has evolved so much and it's become so much more than just about the real pragmatical pieces of entrepreneurship. It's evolved so much. But what is really cool is I started that show, and there's a line in the Talmud that says that words from the heart speak to the heart. They enter the heart. And I was so truly coming from a place of genuine conviction. And that's how things go viral, because it's the resonance in which we deliver the message. It's the frequency. It's felt. People are, we condescend people. We think that people will share something just because you use a pretty filter. It's the shareableness of the depth of the content that makes things shareable, because people always have an ego part of them that like kind of gets into comparisonitis and all that, but they also have a very higher consciousness part of them that is available if you speak to them from a place where you're really genuinely like passionate and vulnerable and all of that stuff. And I did do it that way. And I didn't really expect or feel attached to what had to happen. I wasn't feeling like I would be rejected and feel awful, like a failure if nobody listened. I was just like, this is something I have to do, and I'm doing it. And it was a side hustle to what I was doing full time, which was being a mom and songwriting. And I was writing music for 10 years for shows like Pretty Little Liars and Grey's Anatomy and One Tree Hill and Younger and McDonald's commercials and Walmart. And how that happened is because when I came to LA in 2003, I also thought it was Beyonce or bust. I did the sort of like, I did the like Devil Wears Prada, Coyote Ugly, like move to the big city and try to be all that. And I got a record deal, and I was sitting with Ron Fair watching Lady Gaga record Paparazzi. And I was like, this is insane. Like this, of course, is the pinnacle moment for me. And then the label decided not to put my record out. They didn't know for sure that that would be like worthwhile, which happens all the time, which I didn't know. And then I got signed to a different record label. And I was like, oh, this will be amazing, because Atlantic Records, so that's a better fit for me for this and this reason. And then that record never came out. So I was like, well, there I go. I guess I'll never do what I love. And I went and got a quote unquote real job. And I was working in Brentwood for a guy who sold shopping centers. Like he would buy $300 million shopping centers and then break them into pieces and sell pieces of them.
Wow.
And I had met him at the Cheesecake Factory, and he thought I had a good personality. And so I started working for him, and he paid me $150,000. And my parents and my friends were like, you've made it. Thank God you put down this impractical dream. You're a smart girl. Don't chase your tail, make a living, get a couch at Anthropology.
Right.
You're crushing it. Right. And about 2 years in, it was 2006 or 7. And I was like, I didn't come to LA to do this. I could be anywhere then. Why am I here in the land of like dreams, quote unquote?
Right.
What the hell? Like, I don't need to buy the Anthropology couch here. I could just go get any job. And then I was looking at myself one day in the elevator doors. I saw my reflection. I was wearing a suit from Ann Taylor. And I was like, I don't know who this girl is. Like, what character avatar are you playing?
Wow.
Why are you wearing this double like, who the hell are you with shoulder pads on? Like, exit stage left. So I quit the job, and I don't have parents with a trust fund. My mom was a single mom. We lived in a little apartment growing up, and there were months I remember my mom driving my sister to college, and we were pulled over on the side of the road and asking my grandma to wire money because my mom didn't have enough money in the account for gas. And we had to walk with that little gas tank thing on the side of the highway. Like, that was not a vibe. I come from that.
That was not a vibe.
No. So like, I didn't have parents to fall back on, but I felt in my soul so grossed out that I had sold myself out to do this thing. And I was like, I've already lived through some really yucky, hard stuff as a kid with my dad leaving, and, like alcoholism in our family and all the things that had gone on with my mom and the way I had to like put myself through college. I was like, I can handle this. F them. I'm not going to sell myself for this stupid job that I hate. So what did I do, Emily? I asked myself, is there another way that I could do my music? Is there any way other than being a star on a label and all that razzmatazz has? And I found an article that was talking about Ingrid Michaelson, and she had licensed her song to an Old Navy commercial, and she had her songs on TV. And I was like, wait just a hot minute. you mean you don't have to have a record deal to make money with your music? And I was like, I never considered that. Like my songs are good enough that I got in the room with these people. Why don't I just pitch them to ABC and to all these different ad agencies? And guess what? My real estate job, which I had thought was like a total waste of time, paid off because I had the tenacity to make phone calls, which I had been doing in that space. And I started instead of cold calling investors, I was calling the music department of Paramount and Netflix and all the others. And I made relationships with people and I asked good questions. And I said, what are you working on? And what kind of music do you need? And guess what? Cut to, my song is in this show. I just made $75,000 for a Starbucks commercial. Now my song is in this Target ad. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm making $500,000 and I don't feel like I have a job. This is a dream. So I did that for a whole decade, from the time I was 27 to the time I was 37. And when I was 35, other songwriters started saying, how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that? And I was like, I don't think I've asked myself how I'm doing it, but I should ask myself that question so I can tell you. So very messy. I did a workshop in my house for songwriters on a Sunday. And I said it would be like $300 and we would spend a few hours together, and they ate it up. And I was like, I wonder if I should do more of this while I'm still doing this business, because it was fulfilling. That songwriter, everyone wants to feel like something. So people were like, I don't know the first thing about what you're talking about, and I need to hear more about it. So a friend of mine said, why don't you start something online? And I said, online feels like disgusting to me. Like as soon as I heard her say, do a webinar, I was like, have we met? Like, I don't have an Instagram account. Like, I'm not going to do a webinar. And then I thought, don't be silly. It's just a tool. You don't have to do it the way anyone else does it. So I did a webinar, except my webinar didn't have a single slide in it. My webinar was just me talking. My webinar didn't have a sales page at the end. Right. And I was like, oh, well, this is fine. It's just a means to communicate with people.
Yeah.
And so I told everybody that if they wanted to keep talking, very simply, and I would listen to their music, and I would just do basic, simple, like, I'm here to mentor you. It was $1,000. That was my first offer. That class made $147,000 because 147 people signed up. It was simple.
Wow.
Anyway, that grew. The class structure changed. People started getting tons of things out of it. Lots of success. That class turned into like a $2 million a year additional revenue stream. One of the girls in my class said, this is a podcast. And I said, if it's going to be a podcast, I don't want it to just be about the music business, but I would like it to be about how anyone can apply the same strategies and tools and mindset to any business. So we started my podcast. It really took off. It became, faster growth than I expected. And then I started, interviewing people like Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson. And the more that the conversation started to be really about what's really underneath it all, I looked back and said, oh, it's really energy. It's really the vibe. It's really the passion. Let me teach that. And the truth of the truth was that before I came to LA, I spent 3 years in Jerusalem studying Kabbalah, living in the old city. And then when I came to LA, even though I was working that job, I enrolled at UCLA's Mindful Awareness Research Center and did a whole bunch of training there. And so while I thought those were just things I was doing to like cleanse myself and elevate myself, I looked back during the middle of like year 2 of the podcast and I was like, hold the phone. That is the reason for all of my success.
Wow.
Holy smokes. I can't believe that was so obvious. And I didn't realize it. So then I really started teaching people, how do you change the way in which you see the world? How do you change the hologram? How do you change the lens? How do you like play with the universe and move your vibration and feel good and get all centered? And how does that change your whole life and your business? And I started teaching people that, and that has had major effects in the world. So that I think answers the question, like, why I started it and where I've grown.
Yeah. Wow. That is an incredible story. Thank you so much for getting into all of that. And it's really incredible how, with perspective looking back, things become so clear, right? Because when you're in the real estate job that you hate and you know it's not for you, it could be really easy to be single-minded and just think that it's just not a part of your path. But then you verbalized how actually the skills that you had to use, the cold calling, transferred over to the thing that actually ended up getting you that gig that literally changed your life. And I was just talking about that this morning with a friend, how when we're in the moment, there are these things that seem insignificant, whether it be someone that we meet at a gathering or a conversation we have or a thought to like email some person. It's all these little moments that seem insignificant that if we would actually understand the value and importance of them, we would understand that some of those moments are the moments that will literally change our life. And I feel like your story that you just shared is such a good description of that. So I hope the people that are listening that are in the jobs that they hate or feel, you know, they want to move, or they're in a situation that feels maybe they're seeing it from just a negative perspective, I hope they'll open their minds and perspectives to see that even the places where you knew were not for you, they were important and they were a part of your path, and they actually really prepared you really well for where you went next. And so I hope that can give people peace on their journey as they navigate through, you know, those things.
Yeah. And that's a really fair and important point.
I want to dive in a little bit to your time in Jerusalem. What did that time teach you about the ego and this matrix that we live in? And how did it shift your perspective on the world and also on yourself?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love that so much. You know, I was a world religion major in college, having come out of just such a yucky divorce with watching my parents' marriage unravel. And there was so much pain. And I was like, if I'm going to have to be in college, I have to seek meaning, because my heart was just in so much pain from watching the wreckage and the damage that had been done from all that had just been in my family. And so I remember the dean of my school saying, well, you know, you could get a degree, you can get credit for reading books on philosophy and this and that. And I was like, stop it. So I took a class in Southeastern Asian religion, and I was like swooning over sentences like, oh my God, this is so much more than what I got out of my yoga class. This is what it is. It's amazing. Right. And then he was like, yeah, well, you can get a whole degree in that if you just keep taking classes in that humanities department. And I was like, great, sign me up. And so I had grown up a Jewish person, but I didn't know anything about it. I think a lot of times you just don't, you know, like a cereal, you know, the back of the cereal box, like that's usually how much we all know about any topic. And then we're like, I don't know if that's so interesting. Right. Yeah. But like having now spent a lot of time with Deepak Chopra, right? Like I was just with him for 3 days, like, oh my God, like the depth at which like he can tell you one Sanskrit sentence and then like where you're just like, you could spend hours listening to him talk about one sentence. Well, that's what I found out was also true about Judaism and Kabbalah. And like, obviously, like when you sit back and think about these wisdom traditions and how ancient they are and how they've survived generation and you're like, oh, well, obviously that's why, right? There's clearly a reason these things keep moving through civilizations, because there's something to it. And what I will say is there really is one river that they're all pointing to. So that's what's really cool when you look at all of it. What I do like is that each of them says it in a slightly different way, but they're all saying the same thing. And so just to answer your question, which is such a beautiful, I love that you were giving me the space to answer that question. So here's what my rabbi taught me is that, so the word Kabbalah actually comes from the Hebrew word lekabel. And so the word Kabbalah means to receive. And so when I first met him, he said to me a few very powerful things that was like changing my software program, like hitting Control-Alt-Delete on the program that was running the avatar inside of my brain. And one of the things he said to me is, you are someone because you're some of the one, right? Wow. And then when we talked about this word receive, here's what he shared with me. And it's interesting because I was reading a quote by Nikola Tesla, and what does he say? Like, everything is frequency, right? Einstein says that too. Like Einstein says, you perceive the world as separate things because your eye sees things in 3 dimensions, but we know there's more than 3 dimensions, right? Like there's so much you don't see with your eyes. In fact, most of what is here is energy that it's real. You just don't see it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. In fact, most of it exists in those other dimensions, right? And so what Rabbi Aaron taught me is like, instead of saying what a lot of people talk about as the law of attraction, he said it's more like the law of reception. And he said, what that means is, here's the analogy he gave me, which is brilliant. He said, imagine if you had a radio, quite literally sitting next to you right here and now. Go get a radio. Now, what can you do with it? Well, he said, depending where you tune the dial, you could listen to hip hop music. You could tune it again and listen to a salsa station. You can tune it again. You could hear maybe a sports game and he's like, and I mean, literally, right? What does that mean? He said, it means that quite literally, you're sitting in this room right now. You don't hear anything, but if you tune the station, depending where you're tuned to, it's already here. You're just allowing the radio to hear it.
Wow.
How freaking powerful is that? Wow. And he goes, that's it. That's literally it. So it's already here. All of it. It's already done. All of it is already here. And your job, right, is to be in that state of radical reception so that you can hear the most beautiful music. And the only thing you have control over in the video game of life is where you tune that station. And so if you tune the station to static and negativity, like you're going to hear it. And that's all you'll think exists, when really it's literally already here. You just have to tune your station to a different frequency. It's all in the freaking frequency. And what I said before is, you are someone because you're some of the one. Why does that play a role? Because Cathy Heller is my avatar. And my avatar is changing all the time, right? When Cathy Heller was 4 years old, she had a different haircut. She liked different foods and she had different friends. When she was 15 years old, she liked different music than she does now. She ate different foods and she went to different places with different people. My avatar changes, its hair color changes, its clothes constantly changes, right? Deepak Chopra said to me, that which keeps changing that's not what's real. The only thing that's real is that which doesn't change. So what doesn't change? My soul, the part of me that's not an avatar, the part of me that's a higher consciousness. And that's where I said to Deepak, so why is there so much sadness in the world? And he said, because people don't know who they are. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, people think they are the Cathy Heller part. It's just the I part. I am. And the I am is the part of this oneness. And that's why I brought up the Tesla thing, because there is no separation. There's only this one flow of this infinite, beautiful stream of energy. And when we set down the ego and the subconscious mind that tells us how limited we are in comparison to other people, and we just feel the energy moving through us, we feel, what does our soul and our consciousness really feel all the time? At peace, in love with everyone, boundless, relaxed, at ease, is not in a state of lack, doesn't need something outside of itself, right? So that is what I learned living in Jerusalem for 3 years and walking in that land and just breathing in that teaching was, oh my gosh, like, and it's interesting because that's why, just as an aside, I think it's relevant though, there's so few Jewish people in the world. In the entire world, there's only 16 million, right? Which is like staggering when you think of like, I think there's 1.8 billion Muslims and 1.7 billion, and there's like so few Jews. And the reason why is because part of the tenet of Judaism is not to convert people to Judaism, because they don't need to convert, because they're already there, because no one is not connected to the stream, right? Wow. So that's really interesting to know, is like, there is no belief that anyone is missing anything, which is really fascinating and really powerful. And there's nothing for anyone to do to be more complete than they already have access to, because they're already there. They're already like that. Right. And that was the mission, was to teach that to people, that they're already there. Click your heels, Dorothy, like this oneness, it's already connected to you. You can't not be connected to it. So that's what I learned there. And then what was really cool is like studying meditation from a secular point of view after that, it just allowed me the tools to integrate it in an even deeper way and to teach it to people in a different way. And I really appreciate, like I said, I think actually at one point, Rabbi Aaron was on Larry King with Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson, and they all kept turning to each other saying, what she said, what he said. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So we are always defining ourselves by the lampshade, the lamp itself, what color the lamp is, how big it is, how small it is. And really, it's the light coming through the lamp that is really all that matters. And so when you reorient to that, everything in your life changes.
Yeah. Wow, that is really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And when you were sharing about who our soul is at its core, just at peace and in harmony and in lack of nothing, but in abundance and joy and all those things, it brought me back to one of the first times that I did a full-on breathwork session. I did an hour-long breathwork session, and at the end of the session, we went into a meditative state, and I finally reached this place of just pure stillness. And it's like something opened up, and it was me at my very core, and it was just pure peace, like the most amount of peace that I've ever felt in my life. And that moment is what actually brought me to tears, because the thought that came up for me was, this has been inside all along. And like I feel like everybody is searching for that. They're searching for the relationship that's going to give them peace or love or happiness. They're searching for, all these external achievements and things, or changing themselves so they feel better about themselves, when in reality, if they could tap into that light, that energy that is within them, and really, really feel that at their core, they would know that they didn't need anything or anyone, that it's within them the entire time, and it's definitely a heart of mine to help people access and experience that peace, because it's a really beautiful thing when you finally get to experience that for yourself. I think it really does shift how you show up, the way that you think, what you feel like you need. Like I don't lack anything, and it was just a really beautiful shift in perspective for myself.
100%. And I love how you shared it. And I've done breath work so many times, and I feel that is really true, and not just true, but you can get more out of breath work than you can out of like 20 years of therapy, because that's such a potent somatic experience. And I remember going to my first Joe Dispenza week-long workshop and feeling like, I am so glad I shed that feeling, because this feeling that I have right now on this retreat is really, I want to memorize it. I want to memorize this feeling, because I always have access to it. And what you said about how everybody thinks it's outside of them, it's just so fascinating, because that is so much not it. And it's not, people think that they want certain things to achieve, and when they achieve them, they're going to feel something that's amazing. Like if they have the relationship different, if they have the money they want, like everything's predicated on the bigger house, the difference here, moving here, having this person respond differently, all of it, whatever it is, when really all the person wants is a change in their vibration. All the person wants is an elevated state of being. All the person wants is a feeling of more ease. And you realize, oh my God, I don't need any of those things to happen. In fact, if I think that that's when those things are going to happen, I'll continue chasing something that's like it's a red herring. It's never going to be true. But if I actually get that I can give that feeling to myself by tapping into a feeling of consciousness, a feeling of ease and fullness that's really beyond, we don't realize it. We don't know a lot about the mind. And we know more about like the apps on our phone. But what I learned at UCLA in a very secular setting, just studying the brain, was really important. Like this amygdala that we have is just totally drawn to trying to protect you. And we've heard it, but we don't get it. Like your brain is running a program. And so you are creating your life from an energetic standpoint of lack and fear. And so your life you're chasing things. It's heavy. There's codependency. You want the approval, all that stuff. That's the part that feels awful. And when you start noticing the thoughts and you question them more, and then you start to feel how it feels to just witness them, you start to identify with the part of you that witnesses your thoughts more. And you go, whoa, what's that part of me witnessing? I guess that's really me. That's my consciousness, right? And like only 5% of our brain is even awake and conscious. And imagine if we spent time in there, and then we start to change how we think and we change how we feel, and the world responds because everything is energy and you feel the person's vibration. And next thing you know, now you're available for love in a different way because you're not dependent on it. You're not dependent on that opportunity, which is why it comes. You don't need that person's reassurance, which is why that friend wants to be with you. Like, you become a magnet for so much beauty and goodness when you're available for it, and you're only available for it because you're not depending on it. When you're in a relationship with someone who's needy, whether it's someone you're dating or it's a friend or it's a coworker, it's exhausting, right? But when you're with someone who's not codependent, who themselves is taking care of their own vibe, you're like, great, I love to be around you.
Absolutely. And then I feel like it's just an equal energetic share between the two of you versus one feeling like they're giving and one always feeling like they're taking.
Yeah. I mean, we have it even we have these beautiful Persian kittens, and my 6-year-old, she doesn't know better than to do this. So she like grabs them and holds them, and then they run away from her. And my husband says, you're barreling over them. Stop barreling. Just be cool. And my 11-year-old doesn't grab them. So my 6-year-old go, why do they always just go to Gabby? I go, because Gabby's just sitting on the floor, and then they feel like they can walk over knowing that they can feel that they can leave if they want to. But they've had the experience with you where they're like, if Maddie picks me up, Maddie doesn't let me go. So then I don't like it. I don't feel free. And when you're in a relationship, what can you have? You can either have actual love or control. You can't have both. You can't be trying to control someone and have actual love, because love has to be a choice. So in order to have love in a partner relationship or with your clients, like you have to be clean. If you're doing a sales call and you're like feeling like this person needs to sign up, who will I be if they reject me? Well, it's like, they can feel that from 1,000 feet away. They don't want that energy. But if you're like, this is all good, I'm going to tell you my price, I'm not going to apologize for it, and now you have the autonomy to say yes or no, and I love you no matter what. The person's like, get me in that space.
No
so
kidding.
It's like, in order for you to get all the gifts at the end of the rainbow, you have to be responsible for your own energy. You cannot be in a state where there's always lack, and until this money comes, or until this person texts you, or until you have this many followers, you feel like shit. It just doesn't work, because it'll always keep haunting you. But when you actually feel, I decide, I sit down and give myself access to that feeling of peace every morning. Oh, you're untouchable. And now you decide how you want to feel today. And no one around you can pull you out of it and make you wobble, because you have access to that, which is who you really are, which is not this ego part of you that is codependent. You've kind of like, you override it. You go into the higher, it's like a pilot who flies above the clouds. So yeah, I mean, this is why, as I said, I started teaching one thing. And then I started being like, no, we're going to do a deep dive in spiritual tools, because they are 100%, like every genius person I have had on my podcast, they all have a morning practice. Like Matthew McConaughey is like, I journal every day, do my yoga, meditate. I'm like, oh, so it's not just like a cute, trendy thing. It's like the real deal. And then I realized that I love people getting to create things. And I realized the truth of the truth is that when you have these kinds of spiritual practices, that ultimately is the best possible case for you to become a successful entrepreneur, because all of it goes together. And so it's been really fun to kind of like go through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found in my own life, and even, in speaking to friends and guests, that you really can't supersede where you're at spiritually and where your mind is at. So there are different things that might hold us back, whether, it's our spiritual practices or lack thereof, or our limiting beliefs. And you're really not going to be more successful than your biggest limiting belief. So it's important to get into those. But I want to go back a little bit to where when you were talking about when you're dialed into a frequency, let's say that they're dialed into that static right now. They're listening and they're like, oh my gosh, now I understand. That is totally me. How can people consciously choose to dial in to another perspective, to dial into a frequency that is going to be of abundance and not one of lack? What are some practical things that they can start to do?
I love the question. I think I've said that to you about every question.
So that makes me so happy.
You're so good at what you do. So here's the deal, Emily. We talk about these words a lot, manifesting and vision boards. And I mean, I talked to my rabbi who lives in this 3,000-year-old city in Jerusalem, walking the streets, and he doesn't even know what I'm talking about, right? Because
that's awesome.
You know what I mean? If you ask Deepak Chopra if the movie The Secret changed his life, he would be like, no. You know what I mean? I get what they're getting at, but it's a lot deeper than that, right?
Wow.
And so to go deep with this, here are the tools, okay? It really, 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 really comes down to, how do you feel? How do you feel? Check in, be aware. How are you feeling right now? Because manifesting is another word for saying physics, okay? If I drink this water, I am manifesting that I'm going to have to pee later. Okay?
That is awesome.
And if I feel like shit, I'm going to get that back. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to be a really sticky match for all of that to just keep showing up in my life. See, our only free will that we really actually have is where we focus our attention. Okay. And if you study the neuroscience, that's what mindfulness is. That's what meditation is. People think meditation is about clearing your mind. Well, if you die, maybe you have, I don't know what that's like, but as long as you're alive, you will have a pulse and your mind will be busy, because minds are busy. The point of meditation is not to clear your mind. When people think it is, they go, I hate meditation. It's so hard. I'm like, you're doing it wrong. You're making it harder than it needs to be. The point of meditation is to focus your attention so that you notice, you see what's happening. Because when you're in the blizzard, that's one thing. But when you're noticing the blizzard of the thoughts, that's a very different experience. Completely different. It's 1 millimeter away, and yet it's completely different, right? When we focus our attention, we are choosing what reality we're experiencing. So if you're focusing your attention on the dirty dishes in the sink, you're going to have one thought. And then you might focus your attention on, and why didn't my husband just go ahead and do that? Doesn't he know that I need him to do that? You're going to have another thought. Now, here's the thing people don't realize. Every single thought you think does not stay in your brain, because every thought you think creates a chemical release in the brain. Every thought, everyone. So when you think stressful thoughts, your brain gives you a little IV drip of cortisol. Now, here's what's crazy. On a cellular level, your actual biology gets addicted to it, because cortisol is proven to be more of an addictive chemical than nicotine. So people are addicted to feeling like shit. Okay?
Wow.
When you feel cortisol coursing through you, you feel more like heavy energy and less like light energy. When people feel joy and creativity and enthusiasm, their brain gives them a different chemical. It's not cortisol, it's dopamine and serotonin. It actually changes the chemistry in your cells. Dan Buettner, who was on my podcast, has studied where people in the world live the longest. He found these things called the blue zones. He discovered them. That's amazing. He looked into, why are people in these places living the longest? Is it the weather? Is it the food? Is it their religion? It's like, well, not really. These people are Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California. And these people live in Italy, and these people live in Japan. and they all eat different food and they all have different religions. So what on earth is the reason why these are the places where people live the longest into their hundreds and don't just live, but thrive and don't have cancer and don't have all these things? And he says, what in the actual F is it? Well, here's what it is. All the diseases are created by inflammation. Cortisol creates inflammation. What all these people had in common was they had less cortisol. Why did they have less cortisol? Two things. Number one, they all had a meditative prayer practice every single day, which lowers the cortisol, gets people into receptivity, reorients them to life from a place of like peace and well-being, and it's passed down through their cultures. And they eat a very anti-inflammatory diet. Okay? That's it. They're literally not ingesting themselves with cortisol. So when people say, how do I manifest? I just want the downloads. I just want the money. I just want the followers. I'm like, how do you feel right now? What is the barometer? What is your vibrational imprint in the world right now? What signature are you energetically communicating to the world? Because that is going to show you where you are manifesting. And so really it comes down to, can you feel better? And most people will say, this is what's really fascinating. I don't want to. Now I go, why? And here's the thing. When I tell people that the cost of having everything they want is to set down all the shame, all the doubt, all the anger, they're like, really? When we get real, they go, no. They want to argue for it. They want to hold on to it. It's like, but I'm right. This happened. I'm upset. This is not fair. It's like, you're going to have one or the other. You're either going to hold on to this and keep manifesting yourself in this, like, because if you look at the Dalai Lama's face, he is not in that place. The man is actually in exile. They're in exile, his whole community, right? They can't go home. That's the whole thing.
Right.
It's like, right? He offers a vibration of actual bliss.
Wow.
You can't not smile and look at his face.
Right.
Because he's not holding on. Right? Dr. Edith Eger, who wrote these books, The Gift and the Choice, she was on Oprah a couple times. She's a Holocaust survivor. She's 95. She lives in San Diego. She was in Auschwitz. She lost all of her family except for her sister. That she went through hell, like actual hell on earth. And she does a high kick at 95. I had her on the show twice. She's like, Cathy, stand up. I want to see your blouse. She's like, I just love the colors. She is in charge. She's in charge. She said, you know what? She said, I learned that no one can take from me my joy. That is
wow.
I get to feel joy because F you.
Yeah.
You're not going to take away my peace. So sorry, my friend. You ain't taking it away. Right? I mean, like, come the hell on. Like,
That's
really?
incredible.
Right. So it's like, what kind of day do you want to have? How do you want to feel? And you know what most people will say when it comes down to it? Well, I want to feel like this, but in order to feel that way, I'm going to have to cut you off, Cathy. In order to feel that way, I'd have to make more money. So I'll just wait. Like, really? You're going to wait to feel that good? You could feel that good right now. And then, oh my God, you might bump right into 50 million opportunities to make that money.
Right.
And then you'll realize, oh, I didn't need the money anyway, because the reason I wanted the money is because how I thought it would make me feel, but I can feel that way today already. And so when I look back at my career, I'm like, oh, the reason why this happened. And people would say to me, I think you just have the Midas touch. It's like, I'm just in a state of joy. I'm not attached. I'm not holding on. I can just be joyful. I can be generous. I can be creative. I can be playful. I'm not worried about what are they going to think? What are they going to say? I'm already good. So everything was a blessing, right? The fact that I wound up making all of this money and my husband was able to retire and like, I was already happy. I really was. I was happy when I was living in like a tiny little studio apartment in Jerusalem, eating like an apple for dinner. I was like, this is the coolest day ever.
Wow.
So what does it matter? It didn't.
What are the things in life that make you the happiest?
Everything we just said, right? And by the way, this is why I kind of get excited when something pisses me off or hurts my feelings, or I go,
really?
Ooh, there's an opportunity here for me to be more free.
You're such a personal growth and development nerd. And I
I
am
am.
too.
I'm like,
That's
oh
why
my
I laugh.
God, what a gift. I just realized another level at which I can value what's going on in my life more. And I don't have to play into, because the codependency thing for women is a real thing. Like we were raised to be pleasing, to take the temperature of everyone in the room. It's hard. We make it so much harder than it needs to be. Like even with my coaching clients, and they're like, I want to make money. And I'm like, did you just put it out there? What the offer is, what it costs? Well, I wouldn't charge that much. Why not? I say to them, men don't do that. Men are like, here's
So
the
true.
price. Do you want to play golf or not? They're like, no,
It's
like,
so
that's fine.
true.
They're like, listen, bro, it's all good. Women are like, I will own your answer. I will be responsible emotionally for how you even feel about my offer. It's like, why are you in their business? Give them the autonomy and respect to say, here's what it costs here. So those things make me happy. You know, everything makes me happy, honestly. And I also have my own ticker tape from when I was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 years old. And those, when I bump up against that stuff, it feels like shit. So I know I'm constantly trying to go, ooh, I'm back in this video game that I don't want to be in. And so I definitely know what that's like. You know, I feel that way all the time, but I come to it every day with like, ooh, I can move through this one. I can cross this ocean.
Yeah. And okay, so as somebody who's done a lot of healing and personal development work, you have worked with a lot of different spiritual leaders and healers. What do you think has been most impactful for you going on your own healing journey? What has been the most impactful either tool, or was it in therapy? Was it a practice? What was most impactful for your healing?
I think it's really the way we see reality, right? Like really and truly, like for a while, I thought it was meditation. I was like, meditation is it. This is the most powerful tool. And I think it really is very, 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 very helpful. But I think if you listen to Esther Hicks, or you listen to any spiritual teacher, like all the ones I just mentioned, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williams, the language, the way you rewire what you see versus what you think you see, that's really the most important part, because we see the world as separate things. That's how our eyes see. But isn't it interesting? Whenever you've had the most powerful moments, whether it's breath work or prayer or meditation, you close your eyes. You don't look with your eyes.
Wow.
And you see
that just clicked.
Yeah. And what happens? You see so much further. Right? You see so much further with your eyes closed. You literally see so much better with your eyes shut. And so that's what I mean is the most helpful tool. Like bats don't use eyes to see, they use sonar, right? What are you looking at is the question. How are you really seeing reality? I think what a good coach does is they just hold for you what's really here, how big and wide and vast the possibility is, what it really is. And you can see based on how it feels, and you can see based on how you see through their eyes, right? It's really seeing clearly, because when you see clearly, now you can go towards that island because you can see it. And so I think for me, the most powerful tool is like, wait. You're projecting a movie onto reality as opposed to seeing reality as it actually is. And you're projecting that reality based on limiting beliefs and garbage because you feel safe. There's a payoff to limiting yourself and the way you see what's possible. But that's not actually reality. Like if you, me, and 4 other people were sitting on a park bench and we described the world and what our life is like and what reality is like and what's possible and what's not, I guarantee everyone would say something different. When really there is something that is real, that is objectively true. You know what I mean? Like here's my phone, right? The lens on my phone, the camera. What sees better, me or this camera? This camera. This camera just takes a picture of what's actually in the space. My eyes have a cognitive bias. So I
Oh
will
my gosh.
only, right? I will only see what I project there is to see. So the most helpful tool is constantly seeing through the lens of what's actually real. And what's actually real is everything is here. Everyone is a frequency away. Anything you want's already there. It's all about allowing it in. If it's not in your life, it's because you're resistant to it. If you're resistant to it, you're afraid to have it. If you're afraid to have it, it's because you're making that about you, the small you, right? Because the more you see yourself as part of this oneness, then why do you need to be worthy of anything? Everybody is inherently worthy. It's all a joke. It's all shame. None of that is in their soul, right? So all that stuff, that reorienting how you're seeing, that's the most powerful tool.
I am not often speechless. I'm a podcaster. It's what I do for a living, but I can literally feel my heart pumping blood right now because it's just receiving so much wisdom of everything that you just shared. And I'm sure everyone on the podcast is feeling the same right now. Hands down, this is my favorite podcast that I've ever done. And I don't know how politically correct it is to say that, but I just feel I personally needed all those seeds that you just planted. And I cannot wait for this to get out to everybody. And I do want to respect your time as we're coming here to the close. Is there anything that we didn't discuss that maybe is on your heart for today that you wanted to share before we wrap up?
No, I feel so grateful when I'm in the space with someone who clearly already has such a handle on truth and what really is like the vibe, that like there's even a space to have this conversation. Do you know how many people will have me on a podcast? And I mean, there's no shade. It's fun on a level. They just ask me questions about building a successful podcast, or they ask me questions about the tools that I use for the concrete stuff. And look, if you're going to build a house, in addition to the imagination piece, it is good to know which architect you want and to put insulation in the roof, right? Like
for sure.
There's one aspect to the part of me that's doing the heavy lifting is the resonance that you feel coming through me. But the fact that I put on a pretty shirt and took a shower is helpful, right? Like there's a physical aspect to this thing that's mostly vibration. So I don't mind that much, but I do want us to say thank you, because when we have had our own journey, we appreciate what there really is, what's really going to nourish us. And so I appreciate that you like made the space for that conversation. And I would just tell everybody that I'm so excited that we're changing the name of the podcast to the Cathy Heller podcast, and really embracing, the value of this conversation. And I think everybody will be hopefully blessed by it. As I continue to grow, I think you take people along with you, and thank you for all the beautiful reflections. And if people are enjoying this conversation, they can come say hi on Instagram at Cathy.Heller, or they can follow the podcast. And I can't wait to get to know you better, because again, like I said, it's rare for me. You'd think it wouldn't be, but most people, again, they see what they see. And so they're like, okay, tell me the 5 steps to
For sure.
quit my job and make revenue.
For sure.
And I'm like, okay, great. Let's talk about that.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's really beautiful. And I actually feel very seen, and that feels really incredible. So thank you so much. And to everybody listening, if you guys enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to check the links down below. I'll have all of Cathy's links, her podcast, website, any way that you guys can get in touch with her will be linked below. Make sure to do us a favor. And if you enjoyed today's show, please share it on your Instagram stories. You can tag both of us, or text it to just a friend that you think needs to hear today's show, just to be a part of spreading the message of love and consciousness and awareness. And you get to be a part of each other's evolving journey, because that's what we're here for. So thank you guys again, and I will see you in the next show. Bye, everybody.